MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. We're back with another Team 2023 season preview. I still have no real good name for it. It's still a shitty opening, but no matter what, we're talking Charlotte FC right now. And who better to talk Charlotte FC with than Jorge Gonzalez from Top In 90. Jorge, the man down in Charlotte. How are you, bro?
I'm great, man. I'm excited to be on MLS Aces.
I appreciate it.
I've seen Vaughn in here a couple of times, so anything Vaughn is on, I know is good and has my stamp of approval.
I love it. I love it. Vaughn talks the world of you, Jorge. So that's all you need to know is Vaughn loves you too. But we're here talking Charlotte, and I think not to obviously bring the mood down, but I want to give the love to Anton Walks because no bigger news story has happened this offseason in MLS in the world of soccer than I think Anton Walks, sadly passing away at such a young age. And I didn't have the chance to meet him. I don't know if you've had the chance to meet him or speak with him. I think I saw some stuff come out from you and from Top In 90 that, your interactions with him, but just awful, tragic news that I just want to give my love to him. On the other side, I want to give my love to his family, his friends, and everyone thinking about him. And, I don't know if you have any words you want to say about Anton, but please go ahead if you do.
Yeah, man. Obviously, I mean, it's a tragedy, man. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him a couple of times, just seeing the level of professionalism and leadership that he brought to this squad. I mean, Charlotte did a beautiful celebration of life today.
Yeah.
Andre Shinyashiki spoke. They had videos from a couple of his past coaches as well. So it was just really beautiful, and you can see the love and the respect that he had from this team and from everybody that knew him, man. So, I mean, it's a tragedy, and it just goes to show you, man, it just lets me know, anytime you have a bad day or anything, man, it's not as bad as you think it is, because there's people going through real life stuff, and just value the life that you have and be grateful.
No, 100%, right? Life is short. Live it to the fullest. That doesn't mean go, bungee jump every day or jump out of a plane or do whatever you got to do, but just make sure you're impacting everyone around you in a positive way, the same way that I've heard many speak about what Anton did with the Charlotte FC community, the Atlanta United community, and obviously his clubs over in England prior. But I know Anton was a fan of, or wasn't a fan of, but maybe he appreciated the media's job, the questions they asked, the interviews he had to give, and I'm sure he would appreciate us talking about Charlotte heading into 2023, and obviously 2022 being the introductory season of Charlotte FC, finishing 9th, just outside a playoff spot. A little bit of a turmoil beginning, but I think things got calm, things got better in the end, especially after Christian Lattanzio taking over the team full time. He is now the official manager, and this offseason being a little bit of an interesting one, right? Jordi Alcivar is gone. Alan Franco's gone. You sell Daniel Rios to Chivas Guadalajara down in Liga MX, but you make some additions of your own. Ashley Westwood coming in, Enzo Capetti coming in on a DP deal from Racing Club, Hamady Diop, who's going to potentially fight for a starting job on the back line coming year one out of the draft. I mean, there's a lot of positives I think you can look at from this offseason. So, Jorge, let's start with the offseason. What do you make so far of what Charlotte has done under Lattanzio in this front office this offseason?
I think they've done a couple of key things. One is kind of get rid of or move on players that they don't see fit the style or don't fit the ethos of this team. That's why you saw Jordi Alcivar move on. You're going to see Jordi Reyna. That's not official yet, but he's looking to be moved on. I mean, Daniel Rios, they got a great deal for him.
Yeah.
$1 million and plus for a striker that they weren't going to use as their number one guy, right? So I think that's the first key is that they got rid of players that maybe weren't in the mold of what Lattanzio was looking for. And two, they're bringing in quality players. I mean, one of the things that the sporting director, Zoran Corneta, talked about before the season ended was that, players that they want to bring in are players that should be slotting into the squad, right?
Yeah.
Right into the 11. And you see that in a guy like Enzo Copetti. I mean, DP striker. He, in my opinion, is the type of striker that fits what Lattanzio wants. Lattanzio is about possession of the ball. Lattanzio is about the work ethic, about bringing that pressure. And I think a guy like Enzo Copetti, who's going to work his tail off on and off the ball, be
Yes.
a striker within the 18 that's going to be looking to poach as well. So I think that addition is great. And you also add some experience in the midfield with Ashley Westwood, right? My only concern with that is he hasn't played since April, right? But from what it looks like, he's coming in and going to have a full preseason with the team, which is great. And it'll give him enough time to understand what Lattanzio wants from him, and he'll slot into that in that midfield. So it'll be interesting. At first it was looking like he was going to be a 6, but I wouldn't put it past Lattanzio to try to use him as an 8 as well.
I want to stick with the midfield because the Ashley Westwood addition is interesting, and the Capetti addition also impacts the midfield, however you want to consider midfield, right? So Karol Swiderski, we saw him best played last year as kind of that second striker, maybe that 10, however you want to consider it, behind Daniel Rios. And with the Capetti addition, it almost makes it official that Swiderski is going to kind of drop back into that role that we saw his most success, most production in. So kind of completing that midfield of a Westwood who could be an 8 now, Brant Bronico, Derek Jones, Nuno Santos, all guys who can kind of fit into that other 8, potentially a 6. However you see them, the Lattanzio midfield is very adaptive from what I've seen, 100%. And obviously conversations from Vaughn Pullman. But I do think that Enzo Capetti deal is great because you bring in a DP9, you bring in a guy who you're banking on scoring a ton of goals, but it also allows Swiderski, another one of your DPs, to play his best position under Lattanzio. So, what does Swiderski at this position bring for Charlotte?
I think he brings a lot, man. I mean, if you saw him most of the season, right, like a lot of times you would see him drop back a lot in games because he was frustrated because he wants to be on the ball.
Yeah,
he's not a out and out 9. When we first signed him and you see him, he reminds me more of a Firmino-esque kind of striker, right? Where he's not going to be up top all the time trying to score the goals. He's going to want to create. He's going to want to be involved. And I think Swiderski is the most technical player Charlotte has. So slotting him into that second striker / cam role has been really effective, right? He's going to be able to have more free range within the final third of the pitch. So I think that's really key based on the attributes that he can provide to this team.
And kind of sticking with the attack, because we've covered Capetti, we've covered Swiderski, the wingers are definitely going to be, I think, key to making sure Charlotte takes a jump up in their second season. Jóźwiak and Vargas, I'm assuming in my brain, are the starting 2 wingers out wide for Lattanzio. Not that they're bad players at all, but I think they're players that definitely took year 1 in MLS as an adjustment period. Do you see, or do you expect, them to make a jump up in year 2?
I think they have to, man. I mean, you're hitting right on the money in my thoughts in terms of what I'm looking at, right? Like that's the side of this team that I feel like still hasn't given what it needs to, right? Like, I mean, you've seen guys like Brant improve under Lattanzio. You've seen guy getting production out of Rios, right?
Yeah.
Guy you wouldn't consider, an elite striker, but he did really well for us, right? So in my opinion, the wingers this season have to step up. Kamil Jóźwiak has to step up in that role, and Kerwin Vargas also. One, because the tags of who they have. I mean, Jóźwiak is a DP. Kerwin came in as a U22 player, right?
Yeah.
So these guys have to step up, in my opinion, and it's a big year for them. Like they should demand more of themselves, and I think the fan base and the coaches will demand more from them as well, right? Because on the opposite side, we had a guy like Mackenzie Gaines, who's on what, 70K?
Yeah.
Contributing more than, guys like Jóźwiak and Vargas at the same time. So we're expecting a big year from them in order to help this team have a solid playoff push.
Well, last year you saw obviously number 1 overall pick Ben Bender go off and I think be one of the bright spots, one of the bright youngsters in Major League Soccer last year. You got the number 1 overall pick again this year, Hamady Diop, kind of coming into a back line that has some question marks around it, but also has some solidified spots, I think, in a Malanda and in a Burn right at right back and center back. What do you make of right now what this back line kind of looks like heading into the season?
Yeah, man. You know what? With what happened with Anton Walks, it really brings a dilemma. You're absolutely right. That side of Nathan Byrne
Mhm.
and Malanda, I think, is taken care of, right? They
Yeah.
are solid starters. You know, we were expecting to see Anton Walks start as well, right? One, because Corujo's still not back from his injury. And we were looking, in my opinion, at a Hamadi Diop coming in. And I'm like, okay, it's a guy that could slot into left back or center back, but
Mhm.
I mean, for us to put the money and have him be our number one pick, I was like, is this really a position that we need that is that detrimental?
Yeah.
Right? A center back. I mean, I know we need a left back, but I would expect him to be more of an experienced player versus somebody coming out of college.
Yeah.
But now this signing could potentially become crucial, right? You know, we have another guy that didn't get as much action last year in Jan Sobocinski as well, right? Who, in my opinion, would be the guy that's starting next to Malanda at the
Mhm.
beginning of this season, right? And so Charlotte has a big dilemma. Do they go in the market and find, a solid center back, maybe like a free agent, maybe like a Zavaleta, somebody that they could just come in and, perform when needed? Or do they stick with the guys that they have and wait for Corujo to come back and trust Jan and Hamadi to fill in these roles? So I think that center back position, and I also think left back is a big, big question. From what I know and what my sources have told me, Charlotte is actively looking to bring in a quality left back. But right now, I think Joseph Moore has done a decent job. And I think a fool going into that player coaching role would be another guy that slots in there. We were expecting Adam Armour coming back into the season to be in that role. But based on what Latanja has told him, he's looking at him higher up the pitch, which could be as a, maybe a wing back or maybe a winger. So it'll be very interesting to see that. I think that position is very crucial. They have to fill that left back position.
Interesting seeing Adam Armour potentially push up the field a little bit. I think I like that. I think I like that. But Jorge, I'll finish things off and leave things off here of saying, is there anything, any player, any topic, storyline around Charlotte FC that you feel like I missed that my listeners, people who watch the podcast on YouTube would get benefit out of hearing or talking about a little bit?
I don't think they've missed anything, but I do think I need to echo how this team feels and what you could expect from this team this season. If you look at the last 5 games of last season, the team ended with 1 loss, 3 wins, a draw at home, and a loss at Red Bulls, right? And so it was a team that was motivated, that got close to making playoffs with all the drama that happened last year with Miguel, with, just all this other extra stuff, right? They were coming in this season motivated to prove a point. With what happened with Anton now, I feel like there's a purpose. Like season 2 has a very, very big purpose for this squad, for this team to go out there and show, for their teammate who just passed, to have a great season. There's a sense of responsibility that I feel like these players have, that is just an extra level of motivation that I feel like we will see throughout the season that could really be a driving force for this team this season.
Well, Jorge, thank you for coming on. Thank you for giving the love to Anton, for giving the love to Charlotte FC, because it's definitely needed. And I'm glad we could talk a little Charlotte FC and not from Vaughn. Too much Vaughn sometimes.
Nah, man, you can never have enough Vaughn.
we love you, bro. But Jorge, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone listening, watching, make sure you go follow Jorge and Top In 90, giving the best coverage of Charlotte FC. And honestly, just from a non-Charlotte fan, just interesting reads, interesting coverage. So Jorge, thank you so much, man.
Appreciate that, my man.
MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. And this episode, I'm not sure when this is dropping, but we have another team preview heading into this 2023 season. We're talking Colorado Rapids, and who else would I want to talk Rapids with except for Joseph Samelson from the Burgundy Wave. Joseph, how are you, man? Thank you for coming on and chatting with me tonight.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me aboard. I've been following your work on Twitter. It's great. It's fun for people who need to, get a general gist of like what's happening around the league. And I think you do a good job of doing that.
Thank you.
Happy to be aboard.
Thank you. And you've helped me out with some projects already. So, this is just another project you're helping me out with. So I always appreciate the help.
Of course.
All right, cool. cool. So we're obviously talking Colorado Rapids. We're talking, this very interesting lineup and roster. And I've already DM'd you probably too many times about this, talking about it. But let's quickly look back to 2022, where I think after 2021, probably would say pretty down year for the Rapids, finishing 10th in the Western Conference, 43 points, and missing the playoffs altogether. But we have a little bit of a change going on this offseason, right? Some of the departures, a Giassi Zardes gone, a Lucas Estevez, he's gone as well. A Felipe Gutierrez, Clint Irwin, guys like that also departing the roster. But on the additions, we have a new DP in Colorado, Kevin Cabral coming over from the Galaxy, Connor Ronan coming over as well and kind of helping complete that midfield. Cole Bassett coming back from Europe as well. There's a lot of exciting names on the in. So, Joseph, I'm going to start with the transactions, how the offseason's gone. What do you make of Robin Fraser and this front office move so far?
Well, yeah, you're right that last year was very disappointing. I do think a lot of that had to do with injuries. There was also a lot of individual regression here and there. A lot of players who had great seasons in 2021 had just kind of mediocre seasons in 2022. The other thing was there were a lot of departures after that 2021 season. We saw Austin Trusty, Cole Bassett, Sam Vines, lots of players leave. And the team couldn't really find a consistent lineup. And that left, Fraser starting a bunch of players in a bunch of different positions, made it very hard to sort of expect what was going to happen on a game-to-game basis, which made the Rapids pretty fun to watch, despite the losses. But yeah, this year it started off as a typical Porig Smith moneyballing the league off season by going after intra-league assets that the Rapids believed their clubs weren't valuing them at the same level that they would value them. It's like bringing in Kevin Cabral is a great example of that, as well as Calvin Harris from FC Cincinnati, which is a player they've had their eye on for multiple years at this point. And then Ronan, the most recent acquisition, coming in to shore up midfield, and 3 more international rumored acquisitions that should be finalized in the coming weeks. We're looking at Australian left back Alex Gersbach, Austrian goalkeeper Patrick Pence, and Danish defender Andreas Maxo. So those players are all coming in to help in key positions for the team, especially in a midfield that had to start probably Brian Acosta way too many times last year. And a defense that basically had an answer if Danny Wilson and Lawless Abubakar didn't show up. So between those players, it seems like the Rapids are, assuming all those deals pan out as expected, it seems like the Rapids are going to have a much stronger roster this coming year.
So I want to start with the question marks real quick. So obviously, whenever I feel like there's the mention of an international goalkeeper coming into MLS, it's presumed that they're the starter in my brain. Would you say that that's going to be the case over William Yarbrough?
Sure. I wouldn't say that Pence is Pence going to start day one in Seattle when the Rapids open the season. I don't think so. I would not bet that. But I would be shocked if he hasn't won the starting job by the middle of the season. When Yarbrough first came in, the presumed starter in Colorado was Clint Irwin, who was the backup to Tim Howard during his last year with the club. And despite William Yarbrough coming in at the beginning of 2020, Irwin started for the beginning of the season and the entire MLS's back tournament. But after that tournament, William Yarbrough was suddenly the number one, and Clint Irwin basically was backup for the rest of his time in Colorado. So I would 100% bet on by the end of the season, if Pence is signed, that he will be the starter. And the other thing I like to understand is that the contract situation with Yarbrough is that this is his last guaranteed year. They have one option on him for next year, but he wasn't great last year. And a lot of the advanced goalkeeping stats say that he fell back. He's still good, but he single-handedly won games in 2021. And that just didn't happen last year. There was no game that you could look to and say, Yarbrough is the reason why the Rapids won this game. And I think that's why they're looking for a change, like sort of in advance at that position.
Okay. And I mean, and obviously, right, like if you follow the Rapids at all, you follow any Rapids coverage on social media, or you just look at the roster, the need for left back is there. So it makes sense going out and getting a left back. Obviously, you know, Robin Fraser's a fan of the 3-man back. So bringing more center backs in and talented center backs in for depth there makes sense as well. But I want to talk about Kevin Cabral real quick because, you know, if you listen to Extra Time, if you follow Galaxy folks last season, I don't think that there's any doubt in how dangerous of spots Kevin Cabral can get into. It's the finishing that's the issue. And I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said before. It's been said 100 times about Kevin Cabral. But I think for the Rapids, right, you get a DP for pretty much half the price. The Galaxy are going to eat some of the contract, some of his DP contract. So how do you feel about the addition of Cabral being this DP on the Rapids roster?
I felt pretty bad about it until I learned that the Galaxy were eating half of his budget charge. Like that definitely takes like a huge like load off of it from like the Rapids perspective, I think.
Yeah.
It makes it so that like, listen, he's coming into a team where with a couple of similar players like that have motors but haven't been finishing really well, and that's Jonathan Lewis and Michael Barrios, who when they're on are exceptional players, but they're also very streaky players. And I think like, you know, Cabral is probably the presumed starter over one of those because Fraser has begun like looking at Barrios as like more of an off the bench option recently. So I think like he's the big attacking key for the Rapids this year. And they really do view him, I think, as a player that can slot in wherever they need him. They've got a high motor. They can slot him on the wings. And the way the Rapids left back works is that it's really more of a left midfielder that's just supposed to like hug the touchline and go up and down and doesn't have like a lot of defensive responsibilities. I wouldn't be surprised if they even put him there as like an attacking, high work rate wing back. But listen, like he appears to be saying all the right things in what little media availability he's had so far. He seems like he's here to make a big statement in Colorado, and I am tentatively optimistic about how he can play under Fraser.
No, I mean, I think that he has all the potential in the world, and I hope that, you know, maybe sometimes you just have to find the right home, right? And at the end of the day, maybe this could be the right home for Kevin Cabral. So you pair him with guys who you've mentioned already, Jonathan Lewis, Michael Barrios. Max is back and healthy. Obviously, though, I think the team MVP, in my opinion, of last year, maybe, I don't know, maybe you tell me I'm wrong, but Diego Rubio up top.
Oh, it's absolutely, yeah.
100%, right? So
Diego Rubio is the presumed striker. Whether or not they play him as like a false nine or just in the midfield, kind of like how he was last year, is kind of an open question. And I would say depends on, you know, if Harris, Cabral, or Yoppie get minutes at striker. But either way, Diego Rubio is looking to pull the strings in the attack, and obviously they'll have a healthy Jack Price back, which is going to be such a big burden lifted off this team because, you know, Jack, I think, missed like 20 games last year, and that's just too many games to miss for a player the team relies on that much.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? Like I wanted to kind of fall back into the midfield now because Jack Price is, you know, for lack of better words, I'm not going to be super soccer technical here. Jack Price is that dude, right? Like he knows how to just play the midfield well. He controls the game. He can hit a hell of a ball, and he'll rack up 10 plus assists in a full season if he's healthy. That's just what Jack Price does. And pairing him with a guy like Connor Ronan, who's been brought in, Cole Bassett coming back, like this midfield suddenly went from like scarce options, maybe like you said, starting Brian Acosta too much last year, to now there's a plethora of options in this Colorado Rapids midfield.
100%. And I think it's the Ronan acquisition, I think, is going to be sneaky good in the long term. I'm not sure he's going to like light the league on fire in the first few weeks of the season. But I think around I'd say by the All-Star break, like I think he'll get his footing in the league. And I think there are good options for the team to sort of line up in, even if they don't want to put Ronan on the field right away, even if he's not fully adjusted to the level. But like you said, it does make the midfield look sneaky good, especially like Cole Bassett's return alone is honestly like such a big benefit to this team, because just the way he played in 2021, he created so many chances from second chance balls and sort of late runs into the box, and just like his weird midfield runs like always seem to confuse defenders. Like Cabral and Lewis, he's had struggles with finishing at times, but hey, listen, he just grabbed 2 in the Rapids' most recent preseason scrimmage. So if he can keep that up, man, the sky's the limit for the Rapids midfield this year.
Am I wrong in reading like Cole Bassett's just like an odd but good player to me, where it's like he doesn't have a defined role. He does make weird runs, but like he has a high energy rate. Like he may not be the best finisher, but like he can finish a hell of a ball. Like he's just such a weird good player.
He's very much, I think, a luxury player, which is I think why he wasn't as successful in Holland, especially when he made a move to a team and like that was in a relegation scrap. But Bassett sort of thrives when other teams are so focused on other players, like your Kevin Cabrals or your Jonathan Lewis's or your Diego Rubio's, right? When defenders are so focused on those guys, Bassett can just thrive because he's so good at finding just weird spots to receive the ball and take shots. So sort of like a roaming playmaker, I guess. But he works really well, and I think Frazier knows how to work with him, and I think Frazier knows how to get the best out of him. So I think he's going to be really good this year.
The last part of this Rapids team that we haven't talked about is that back 3, those 3 center backs. I guess Keegan Rosenberry we can consider a right center back at this point too, right? My brain, I mean, he obviously was a right back most of his career, but my brain, it's just weird seeing him as a right center back. But we have Danny Wilson, Wallace Abubakar, maybe Keegan Rosenberry at that right center back. What do you make of this center back just crop as of right now?
I think it's going to be great if when Moxo gets here. So for those of you who don't know, the Rapids usually or often, I would say, not all the time, but they often work in the system that acts as like 4 in the back in defense and 3 in the back in attack. And what that usually involves one of the fullbacks staying in more of a defensive role while the other takes on an attacking role. So last year you would have regularly seen Keegan Rosenberry line up as a right back, right? When they're in defense. But when the Rapids push into the attack and the left back bombs forward, Keegan tucks into the back line and sort of serves as a outside center back. So yeah, I would largely expect him to fill a similar-ish role this year. Like whenever Keegan plays, you can expect the side he's on to be a little bit more of a defensive side. He's not going to bomb forward a bunch like, Lucas Estevez did last year, or Brian Galvan before him, or Sam Vines before him. I think Moxo comes in as an incredible ball playing option, because this year, like the only true ball playing center back that the Rapids had on the roster was Danny Wilson. And Danny Wilson, he can ping an incredible long ball, but the moment you force him to do any sort of one-on-one defending, it's usually a train wreck. And I love the guy because he is one of the best passing defenders in MLS, but just that area of his game is so obvious from watching him for, I guess, 4 years now with the Rapids. Moxo coming in as an option, as a ball player and a leader who can sort of marshal and organize that back line is going to be great. I know the team is expecting better things from Gus Vallecilla this year, who is the sort of late Austin Trusty replacement that he played 500 minutes and I believe was sent off 3 times. So that just gives you an idea about how that went. But listen, it does tend to take players a year or so to bed into the Frazier mindset. So we can write off last year as a mulligan if he comes out guns blazing this year. But assuming he comes in and assuming the Gersbach signing works out well, I think the Rapids have themselves a good crop of players to make up a defense. And that is my true biggest focus this year, because the long and short of why the Rapids didn't make the playoffs last year. You can point at injuries, regression, whatever, but they just conceded too many soft goals.
Yeah.
Like Frazier said it in, I want to say 15, 20 different press conferences last year, where he didn't name anybody, but he was like, yeah, we've been talking about giving up these sort of goals and why, why they're so bad for us. And I think if they can handle that, then they're right back in the playoff race this year. And honestly, the ceiling of this team, I think, could be a home playoff game in the West for sure.
I think they have a high ceiling. I also think that there is a little bit of a low floor if things continue to go bad, right?
If there's another injury crisis like last year, it's going to be more of the same.
Or you have continuous, finishing issues as well into the attack, or both, and it's another poor season. But I do have high hopes for this team. And Joseph, I've been finishing up these conversations with everyone for the most part. I've missed a few, but for the most part, I've been asking: is there a player? Is there a storyline? A topic that I haven't asked you about? We haven't talked about that. If you're listening to this or you're watching this and you want to get a quick education on the Rapids heading into the season, that you feel is important to mention.
I mean, the Rapids are usually not a star powered team, right? It's about under Porrick Smith's tenure and with Robin Fraser, it's about extracting the best out of the group, out of like a high floor group that they see as a high floor group. And this year, I think it's so significant that the team is making the bulk of their acquisitions from outside of the league. Because we've seen this team for a long time since Smith took control of general manager in 2017. Mm-hmm. It's always been about those MLS moves. It's always been about getting a guy, from within the league that isn't necessarily isn't getting game time or isn't valued by their team, and sort of turning him into a consistent player. Think your Kellen Acostas, your Keegan Rosenberries, Austin Trusty. Yeah. Exactly. That's the type of player that the Rapids have mainly been going after. Yeah. But this year, it's looking like they could have up to 4 or 5 regular starters who did not play last year in MLS.
Exciting.
And yeah, that's exciting for the team. But for an organization that has had ups and downs going after international players or after non-MLS players, it's definitely a big gamble. And that's what I'm watching this year. On a player notice, I would really like to see Darren Yapi make this his breakout year, because I think there's not a true sort of target forward on this roster. Mm-hmm. And I think Rubio's best spot is in the midfield. So I think it would be ideal if Rubio sat behind Yapi and worked that way. But that's my sort of one to watch this year. I think Yapi's really got the toolkit to be a successful MLS striker.
2023 could be Yapi season, and it would be a ton of fun for Colorado Rapids fans for sure. Well, Joseph, I want to thank you so much for coming on, talking some Rapids with me, giving me an education and giving the listeners an education as well into the Colorado Rapids. Everyone listening, watching, make sure you go follow Joseph Samelson on Twitter, social media, all that fun stuff. And make sure you go support the Burgundy Wave, and obviously any other independent person out there covering the game of soccer in the U.S., because it's super important. Joseph, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy, and we're doing another one of these team previews heading into the 2023 season. And we're talking today my favorite club, but that doesn't mean it's just me. We're talking NYCFC, and joining me is Mike Anderer from Blue City Radio. If you guys don't know, Blue City Radio is, I think, one of the best, if not the best, NYCFC specific podcast out there. It's my favorite podcast to listen to, again, as a fan. But Mike, thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining and talking a little NYCFC with me.
Oh, Tom, thanks for the kind words. It's definitely a labor of love. I know with what you've got going on, both personally and with MLS Aces, you know what the deal is about. But Blue City Radio's been around since before the club existed, and we're proud to be carrying the torch for other NYCFC podcasts.
Well, you guys are doing it. You've done it, and that's all you can ask for. And I've been a listener from season 1 with NYCFC, so it's been a good time. But let's talk NYCFC, right? Because obviously 2021, we're coming off MLS Cup. We're feeling good. I saw my first championship of any major sport in New York, so I was excited. 2022, little bit of a different story. Obviously, finishing third in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I was happy with the third place finish. Wish we could have pushed for second a little bit more, but after the season we had, I think, overall, I will take it. And then in the playoffs, obviously losing to the Philadelphia Union in the conference finals 3-1. This offseason has been interesting. It's been a mass exodus. I think you said on the last episode of Blue City Radio as well. I keep my personal depth charts for all MLS teams, and just because I'm an MLS nerd like that. But usually I highlight about 3 players per team of like important players that have showed up or that have arrived, that have left. For NYCFC, I think I'm about 8 deep that are highlighted and players that have departed. So on the out, we can list Alexander Kynes, Maxi Morales, Sean Johnson, most likely now, Santi Rodriguez, Kacha Acevedo, Anderer, Anton Tinnerholm, and a few others there. Coming in, it's not that much, right? Justin Hack's return, Matias Pellegrini's return. We got a young right back over from Europe. So, Mike, I'll start with you just on the off season. I'm assuming not good, but I have to ask, how has the off season been in your eyes?
No, you're right on track. It's not that it's not good. It's actually pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you, and I've heard a lot of people comment the same way. NYCFC is typically a little bit late to the party as far as their signings. The season being starting in 31 days doesn't exactly give a lot of time to get players acclimated to the system.
Yeah.
But last year, Gabby Pereira was a late signing. So NYCFC has done signings pretty late. When Talish Magno and Thiago Andrade both joined the team, those were kind of late signings. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of people who are saying, hey, trust the scouting network. You saw what they did with Micha Elenik and him coming in. It's obvious that the team is planning on going younger. Yeah. Elenik being 18 years old. Brian Kufre is the latest guy from Argentina who's currently with Mallorca. He's being rumored now by Tom Bogart to be joining NYCFC, or at least being close to joining. He's 26, a 26-year-old left back. That would be the replacement for Alexander Callens. So it's clear the team is going younger. I guess there's a big question mark with Nick Cushing because this is going to be his first year at the helm. Yeah. We saw where Cushing really preferred and got the most out of the team when he could go 3 in the back. So you need another left-footed center back, and I don't think Tony Alfaro is the answer. And the thing that I looked at, in preparation for this show, was looking at the statistics. 57% of the goals that NYCFC scored in 2022 are gone. Yeah, they're not coming back. Those players have moved on. So how do you replace that much performance on the offensive side? And then when you look at Alexander Callens and Sean Johnson, both free agents that are Callens we know is gone, and Sean Johnson most likely gone. Two big pieces to the defense that kept NYCFC so competitive. You're losing it on both ends. So that's a tough offseason to stomach.
Look, you're losing productivity in all phases of the game, in net, on the back line, in the midfield, in the attack. You're losing club legends at all phases of the game as well, right? And Sean John and Anton and in Maxi and in Alex and all of that, right? So you're losing a lot. You're losing a lot of leadership as well. And like you said, it definitely feels like NYCFC's trajectory is to go younger. Does that young talent keep us at a level that we've been at for the last few years, and that we're top of the East or around top of the East every single season and making a playoff run? That's the big question mark, I think, around this team. But I guess let's talk about who we do have. And I'm going to start optimistic because I do think our attacking 3 of Thiago Andrade, Talish Magno, Gabby Pereira alone is one of the better attacking 3s in Major League Soccer still. I know there's not much behind, but if you just look at those front 3, I think it's still one of the most talented in the league. What's your take right now on the NYCFC attack?
Well, I think you're right with Talish Magno. I think the big question, and he said it during the MLS media day out in San Jose, that he plans on playing the 9.
Yeah.
The question is, can he do that? Again, that's a new position for him. He preferred to be on the left wing when he started, and that's where we saw the most success from him. That's where he put together his best performances. Playing the 9 is different. Can he play back to goal? Does he have to play a little bit sideways and try to receive the ball and open up. That's going to be a question. And then Thiago Andrade is another question mark, because he's got the talent, he's got the skill, he's got pace to beyond belief.
Yeah.
But he with Santi Rodriguez on the roster, with Talis Magno playing in the left when Tati Castellanos was on the roster, Andrade was always a depth option.
Mm-hmm.
And does he have the ability to be that starter, that consistent player in MLS?
Yeah.
Let's not forget that Andrade, when he joined NYCFC, had only been a professional soccer player for 2 years, and we saw that immaturity pop up a lot in MLS games, and especially in that Open Cup match against Red Bull.
Yeah, right. And it is make or break sometimes, right? For players to have a season, this is your position, this is your time, and you have to go produce. And I feel like that's what this season is for Thiago. And then obviously I think Gabby's proven himself more and more. He was one of the more excellent pieces in attack in Major League Soccer last season. So Gabby Pereira, I'm not too worried about. I have my reservations about Talis Magno at the 9, but we'll see there. Let's jump to the defense a little bit, because like you said in kind of the introduction to this, Nick Cushing, we saw the most productivity, we saw the most success, we saw just the better soccer being played underneath NYCFC when they were in that back three. Right now, I'm not going to say we have 3 center backs on the roster that I feel comfortable enough in running out of back 3. So I'm kind of viewing it as a back 4 as of right now, until maybe we can get a few more pieces in. But what's your take right now on the defense? Obviously, we still have Maxi Chanot on that back line. He's getting another year older, though. We have a DP center back in Thiago Martins, who I'm hoping can, up his game after a full season in Major League Soccer. Tavon Gray's back. Kevin O'Toole. It's Kevin O'Toole season apparently all across NYCFC last year, and hopefully that leads into this season as well with Malte Amundsen. What's your take right now of what the defense looks like for the squad?
It's a crapshoot right now. And again, I think part of it is because when you look at the players that are still here, Malte Amundsen is a great example. Malte Amundsen lost his job to Kevin O'Toole, a guy who was playing NYCFC for NYCFC too.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Again, is that just Nick Cushing and his preference on how the positions are played? And let's not forget, yes, Kevin O'Toole stepped in and did great, but Kevin O'Toole, in my opinion, what he did as far as playing that left back position or the left wing back position, was it really freed up Alexander Callens, because that was when Callens emerged as a attacking threat, and was able to almost play a second midfielder, or I'm sorry, a third midfielder moving forward and attacking and being unmarked. So we saw O'Toole get a lot of opportunities, but even in that game against Miami and Citi Field, it was just some of those times that the ball just got away from him.
Yeah. Again,
let's give the kid some credit and give him more time to develop, and let's see what he can do. But I think we saw with Andres Jason on the right side, sometimes moving these players back and forth from the attacking positions to the defensive positions, it looks good in spurts.
Yeah.
But it's not something you can rely on. And again, I agree. There's not 3 center backs that you can rely on. And I made a mistake. Kufre, the Argentine, he's a left back, not a left center back. So again, it'd be a question of can he play that center back position? That's the biggest void right now. Aside from Tony Alfaro, and I would say Kwaku Owusu, who don't think we've seen in the preseason. Those are your 2 left-footed center back options, and Owusu's not really left-footed. He's just a guy from the academy that can play with both feet. And Benalcazar, who's again the NYCFC 2 product and the homegrown, those are the guys that can play with both feet or play the left-sided position well. That's a big problem, and I think we've seen with Cushing is when he is forced into decisions, that's when he struggles.
And that is what I'm worried about for NYCFC, right? Because for where the roster stands right now, it does feel like unless we're playing Keaton Parks in a back 3 and Justin Hack playing in a back 3, Alfredo Morales playing in a back 3, it's like we don't have a ton of options right now as far as depth goes, as far as versatility, as far as starting quality across the board at pieces. I want to finish things up, obviously, with the midfield, because Keaton Parks, I would say, is maybe the rock on this team if I had to have a question when he's healthy, right? Because that's also a big point of it there too. But like Talis Magno, I think, is the undisputed star of NYCFC. But I think Keaton Parks, when he's in the roster, does just make everyone around him better. I think we saw that towards the end of last year. We saw that in his appearances in the playoffs as well. You pair him with an Alfredo Morales, who's been around, who's a USMNT guy in the past, and who I think is still pretty good. Justin Hack, maybe Matias Pellegrini comes in to be that 10. I'm not exactly sure right now, but what do you make of kind of where the rest of this team falls?
No, I think you said it perfectly. People are penciling in Pellegrini as a possible 10 because who else are you going to put there? You can maybe try Parks as the 10. You can maybe try Talish as a 10, but then you open up that spot at the 9, and Talish already said that he plans on playing the 9, so it's a big question mark. And I like Hack. I think he's done well, and I think he's another young player, homegrown, who has an opportunity to grow and to develop into a stronger role. But injuries are going to be a huge factor. Alfredo Morales missed a lot of time last year. Keaton Parks missed a lot of time last year. So there's no depth. I think that's what's really killing this midfield is, Maxi was a shock to leave. Santi was a question mark because of the way his deal was structured and being that lone player. And then Cacha Acevedo was a big shock. And I think that's the thing that upset NYCFC fans. That was a domino, one of those early dominoes to fall, where people said, wait, now NYCFC is a feeder club to Girona and to Bahia. When is CFG going to continue to invest in NYCFC?
Oh, look, I mean, that hurt me, right? Like Anton, I assumed he was gone. Like that one hurt, but like I accepted that one. Cacha leaves, we trade away a Bear. Maxi decides to go back to Rossing. Like it just, like you said, it was just domino after domino. And I was like, we need players in to replace these legends who have kept us at the top of MLS, right? So definitely a struggle. Actually, my final question for you. Do you believe that this might be the biggest year in NYCFC history as far as homegrowns are concerned? Because at this rate, we are going to get a lot of homegrown minutes, right? In a Hack, in an Owusu, maybe a Jason, maybe a Christian McFarland as well. I don't know. What's your opinion on, I guess, the homegrown situation right now?
I think it's a great opportunity for him. I think this is the best opportunity for us to see homegrown, a game with 3 or 4 homegrown starters. That's been one of the things we've seen games last year where you've had 3 homegrowns on the field. We're still waiting for that first homegrown goal. Tavon Gray probably should have had it against Miami, but it got called offsides for some reason. So I do think this is going to be a breakout year. And again, I think a player like Owusu, who got limited minutes last year, I think he's going to have a great opportunity this year. And then let's see what happens. Andres Jason, all these players getting a little bit older, having that ability to bulk up. We saw that with James Sands when he had his first couple of seasons. He was getting pushed off the ball, and then in the championship season, he was an absolute beast. And it was partially mental. It was part mental and part physical. But I think the last thing I want to leave you with, and you've mentioned a lot of these players that have left the club, and I think that the thing that people have to remember is they aren't just club legends. They're proven champions that are gone. And you still have Chanot out there. You still have Keaton Parks out there, Alfredo Morales. But there's a lot of champions, guys who knew how to win in the locker room. And it's going to be I don't know who Cushing is going to lean on to get the message across that they have to dig deep to win some of these games.
I think this might be a very big year in defining what the next few seasons of NYCFC looks like. Unfortunately, right, you hope you can you wish you could just replace championship quality talent and experience with that, but it doesn't always work like that. So NYCFC, biggest question mark in MLS, I think, probably heading into the 2023 season. But if you guys want to hear more about NYCFC, how the season's going, coverage, everything like that, you have to make sure you go check out Blue City Radio. Mike Anderer hosting it. Mike, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Good luck.